Nexus Coffee Bar sat in a place of pride in the middle of the Nexus. Situated at the crossing point between Earth and the outer planes, between heaven and hell. It sat at the crossroads of reality. As such, it was frequented by customers both celestial and infernal. Not that one could tell the difference by looking. In fact, I blended right in, and I am neither. Long ago, I discovered I could walk out of hell uncontested. I never made it further than the Nexus before finding myself back again, though. Each trip I could spend more and more time there, as long as I didn't let my mind go blank. It was on one of those trips that I realized the coffee bar was free, and I became a regular. Did you hear the latest AD stats? The voice that whispered in my ear with a warm puff belonged to Ashresha, or Ray as she preferred. Ashresha was an inveterate flirt, which I figured out in our first meeting. She was also an infernal, although I only found that out after we talked a few dozen times. No, I didn't. Interesting news? I whispered back. I learned a long time ago to just go along with the conversation, and not try to fake any sort of knowledge I didn't have, like what an AD stat was, or why I should care. She's just excited because we're slipping, the voice whispered in my other ear, although with less breath, belonged to the celestial Lillian. I turned around and leaned in close to the two, who stood with an arm around each other's waist. Why are we whispering? I don't know, Ashresha whispered. There was an awkward moment between the three of us. I'm not sure who started it, but we fell into a fit of the giggles. An outside observer would never guess that the slim, pale, freckle-faced, ponytailed redhead was an infernal. The short, dun-skinned brunette with bright green eyes and a hint of pink in her cheeks was a celestial. Or that the dark, brown-skinned woman with messy black curls was a human who had walked out of hell. Should I pick up our order while you two find a table? I asked. You're such a dear, Lillian said. I'll have a triple anger brew today. I'm going to need the energy. Just my usual cutie. Ashresha brushed her hand against my cheek. Okay, a triple anger, a half and half love and lust, and a double piece of me. I'll be right back. One of the unusual features of the Nexus coffee bar was the ordering system. Once one decided what they wanted, it was started without requiring any other input. Except for times when it was super busy. It was enough to decide on entering what to order and head straight to the counter to pick it up. Our coffees were sitting in a carrier on the counter by the time I got there. Tucked between the cups was a flyer. I found the ladies at a table in the back corner and joined them. Lillian looked at the flyer and said, Ooh, fall tasting tomorrow. I'll be here. She held the flyer out. Ray? As Raisha read it, a smile spreading across her face. I love these things. I wonder if they'll have any new flavors this time, or just the usual fall lineup. Either way, you'll know I'll be here. She passed the flyer to me. What about you, Abby? A coffee tasting? I've never been to one, I smiled. I think it might be fun. Lillian raised an eyebrow. On that note, I think Ray is bursting to tell her news. As Raisha sat up straight, shoulders back. The AD rate for the last quarter, it's just insane. 6.4% ascension, which is about average, but... Her eyes widened. Descension was up from 0.3% to 2.4%. Descension? I asked. Ascension made sense to me, those who ascended, from hell to heaven. Did this mean it could work the other way too? It's incredibly rare, or at least it used to be, as Raisha answered, but sometimes souls travel from heaven to hell. There's been some sort of emotional sickness, a sort of mimetic virus spreading there, Lillian sighed. We've been doing what we can to limit the spread, but it's difficult. As Raisha hugged her, Lily, I'm here for you. You'll get through this. Lillian leaned her head on Ashresha's shoulder. Thanks, Ray, but don't call me Lily. Lillian sat up and started in on her extra strong coffee. So, Abby, how much longer do you think it'll be before you ascend? I was stunned. It didn't occur to me that they might know I wasn't one of them. What? Ashresha laughed. Don't be surprised. We knew you were a human all along. She leaned in close. You've already figured out that you can walk out of hell. I nodded. I can, but I keep popping back there. It's annoying. Ray lifted my face with a gentle finger on my chin. When you figure out what you're holding on to, you'll be out for good. What I'm holding on to? I searched her blue eyes for an answer, but found none. I just keep getting dragged back. Azratia leaned forward, close to rubbing noses. The only thing that can drag you anywhere is you. She gave me a quick kiss in the forehead. We have to get to our jobs. See you here tomorrow. I wandered around the Nexus for a while, mulling over what Ray had said. According to her, something I'm holding on to is the reason I keep going back to hell. To put it out of my mind, I watched the crowd streaming through, trying to guess celestial or infernal. But from the way Ray and Lillian had just acted, any of them could be human as well. With that, the game lost its luster, and I found myself back in hell. It's not like the stories. There's no fire and brimstone, or demons with pitchforks, or anything even remotely sinister. Instead, it's my life, but the only parts I can see are those where I made a mistake, wronged someone, or hurt someone. At first, it was every single horrible moment. Over time, I grew inured to most of them. Now, only one remained. Mum, look, I don't have time for this. My exasperated sigh was exaggerated for effect. I'm going to the mountains with some friends from work. We can talk about it when I get back. My knuckles grew white as I gripped the cell and my mother droned on. Abby, I really feel like I need to see you today. Her voice shook. I don't feel... It just... Something feels off and I need you here. Mum, I just spent the whole weekend with you last week. My friends want to see me now. I rolled my eyes. There's nothing wrong. Just watch your shows. And I'll stop by when we get back Sunday evening. Abigail, please. I need to see you today. Mother, I love you, but you're being selfish. And more than a little of a pain in the ass. You'll see me Sunday. Bye. I ended the call before she could say any more. I didn't get to experience the trip again, as that was a good time. Sunday morning, we packed up and headed back to civilization. As we reached the pass and re-entered the connected world, my phone blew up. Missed calls, texts, voicemails. My friends dropped me at the hospital, and I left my bags with them. My mother didn't see me on Sunday. She'd had a stroke 2 hours after our call, fell into a coma, and never recovered. I held her hand and cried, begged for her forgiveness. She had reached out to me and I blew her off. More than anything, I hoped she knew that I loved her. After I endured this never-changing loop several hundred times, I forced myself to turn around and walk. The Nexus was never more than a few steps away. No matter how long I spent in hell, every time I entered the Nexus was the next day relative to the last time I'd been there. Lillian and Azratia were already seated and Lillian waved me over. You're just in time. They bring the samples out now. The tables were set with small plates, scorecards and pencils, water glasses, still water, and sparkling water, soda crackers and pear slices. What's with the snacks? I asked. These are for cleansing your palate between samples. Azratia placed a soda cracker and slice of pear on her plate, and poured herself a glass of sparkling water. Lillian did the same, but with still water. I followed suit, and Azratia filled my glass with sparkling water before I could decide between the two. Waystar brought out trays with 5 shot glasses on each, numbered. In the center of the table they placed 5 cards face down, numbered on the backs. The fronts held the names of the drinks. The scorecard listed the numbers and a place to enter a score, 0 to 10 for each one. There was room for comments on the back of the cards, but Lillian told me hardly anyone filled that part out. We decided to go through them in order, starting at number 1. Lillian and Azratia decided we wouldn't look at the names of any we hadn't yet tried. Ray sniffed the first. They do this one every fall, she said, and for some reason there are a lot of folks hooked on it. It smelled spicy and rich. The taste was warm and complex, with a sharp tang and an earthy sweetness underneath. It tastes a bit like cloves, nutmeg, cinnamon, and... Is that pumpkin? I asked. As I went down, I felt a lurch in my stomach, as if I were falling. What is that? I turned over the card, but before I had a chance to read it, Azratia answered, Fried. Not my favourite, hate it. She marked a dark 0 on the scorecard. Lillian, however, shivered once and beamed. I take it you like it? It's the best part of fall, she said, marking a 10 on her scorecard. I marked it a 3, but probably should have marked it lower. The next, I hoped, would be better. After a small bite of cracker and pear, and a couple of sips of water, we moved on to number 2. Oh, Lillian said after sniffing it. If it's what I think it is, they haven't done this one in a few years. I missed it. After her 10 on the first, I was hesitant to trust her recommendation. Still, that's what I was here for, to try new things. It smelled a bit like moist dirt. I took a sip, and as Rachel and Lillian watched closely. There's a sweet but sour taste to it, kind of like a berry top note. After swallowing the rest, I felt a mild case of the blues creeping up on me. I hesitated to turn the card over, but Lillian swooped in and did it. Yes, they brought melancholy back. She marked another 10 on her scorecard, while as Rachel and I both rated it a solid 6. She looked at our cards. You two have no taste. Says the woman who slams triple angers, as Rachel said. We cleansed our palates and moved on to the next on the list. The rest of these are all brand new, as Rachel said. We could see that on the scorecards, where next to each of the remaining numbers was a little blue stamp that said, brand new, but we didn't bother to point that out to her. The next one was difficult to define. Every time I thought I had a grip on the smell, I lost it. I'm not sure what this smells like besides coffee. Lillian and Azratia both looked confused as they smelled it. Well, down the hatch. It tastes like citrus, or... No, Azratia said. Not citrus, more like, I'm not sure what it tastes like. It's really subtle, almost insidious. I looked at the empty shot glass. I didn't feel anything, though. Wait, maybe I did. I'm not sure. Frustrated, I grabbed the name card and turned it over. Doubt. Considering it does exactly what it says in the name, I want to rate it high, but the flavour is just so-so. After a bit of back and forth, we all rated it a 5, and got ready for the next round. It's got a peaty smell, Lillian said. We all agreed and swallowed it down. Dark, Azratia said. Almost too dark, I said. Almond notes. The possibility that it was laced with cyanide popped into my head. My stomach tied itself in knots. My heart raced. Maybe drinking coffee designed for Celestials and Infernals was a bad idea for a human. I love it, Aracia said, and marked it 10 on her scorecard. Lillian marked it a 6. It's alright, but I don't think it agrees with Abby. Aracia handed me a cracker and a slice of pear. Here, take this. I did, and as my palate cleared, the feeling went away. Let me guess. Dread, right? Aracia turned the card over. Damn, she got it. I thought maybe it was loathing. I marked a 0 on that one. We took a short break before the last one. Finally, we all grabbed our last sample and took a sniff. Lillian's nose wrinkled, and Aracia turned aside in disgust. To me, it smelled like home. Well, we didn't come this far to back out now, Aracia said. She placed another cracker and several slices of pear on her plate and refilled her water. She took a deep breath and said, Let's do this. Aracia swallowed, gagged, chugged her sparkling water and stuffed the cracker in her mouth. Lillian frowned. That's the worst thing I've ever tasted, she said. It's warm. It tastes familiar. Comfortable, I said. Maybe it's an acquired taste, but for some reason it tastes normal to me. I marked it a 10, while Azratia and Lillian both marked it a 0. Azratia turned the card over and nodded. When she didn't say anything else, I looked at the card myself. Guilt. Her words returned, that I needed to figure out what I was holding on to. That was it. Azratia, thank you. For what, Abigail? She was casually nibbling on the remaining pear slices. I know what keeps dragging me back. I lifted the shot glass. This. That's foul, Lillian said. You definitely need to let go of that. I used to wish we were more like humans, Azratia said. I won't say I envied you, except when they do the envy blend in the spring, but I thought it must be nice to be able to feel emotions just whenever. It's a bad deal, though, Lillian said. Who wants to feel anger when you need to focus, or contentment when you need to fight? Exactly. Azratia grabbed my hand and held it between her own. And who would ever want to feel that, she said, nodding at the shot glass in my other hand. I'd rather be run through with a spike. I felt the weight lift, for the first time since my mother died. Tears began to pour in my eyes. Oh no, Lillian said. We've made her sad. No, I said. Not sad. Just very happy right now. But you're crying. Lillian, Azratia asked. Are you telling me you've never heard of happy tears? Oh yeah, I've heard of it. I just thought it was a saying or something. I didn't know it was real. I turned the shot glass upside down and slammed it down on the table. Can I have a hug? Instead of answering, they both moved around the table and held on to me. I've let go of so many other things. I think it's time to let this go too. As we held on to each other, I noticed that they both started tearing up. Happy tears, Lydian said, and she and Erasure laughed together. But how? I asked. I thought you couldn't feel emotion without... I nodded towards the empties on the table. That, as Erasure said, or if a human openly shares it with us, thank you. This is the most precious gift ever. We held each other for what felt like hours, although it was likely only a minute or two. You two probably need to get to work. Meanwhile, I think I'm ready to go home. They kissed me on opposite cheeks, then we untangled. The two of them hugged briefly and giggled, wiping their tears, before walking their separate ways. I strolled around the Nexus, watching people, not trying to figure out who or what they were, but just watching. I cleared my mind and let myself drift, and a door opened to my right. Beyond the door stood my mother, arms open, a warm smile on her face. I ascended.